segue me into, because he came into my life right after, I guess maybe about 3 years after Roxy and we met one another. We saw each other and, started dating after some resistance on my part. But he initially was like, oh, this is me. Like, are you working for the enemy? Do you still work over there? Because I was blacklisted and it's only been 3 years. I mean, I got 2 more 2 more years of blacklisting. I literally thought he was a spy.
You thought he came to like check up on you for the spy.
I did. Now, do you think that was what do you call those, paranoia? Do you think that?
Because you could be in a group. So the group that our dear Lola started, and I never knew that story, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I knew there was Redeemed, and Redeemed performed at my wedding. I mean, you weren't at that one. You might have been traveling or something, but but people to this day still talk about the Jesus that they brought into that church when they. Oh my goodness! But I've always teased your line. Y'all can sing, baby. All of you. And my line can do none of that. I mean, we have a few people who sing, but Lord have mercy. We can stop though.
That's right. Oh yeah.
Put our mics toward our feet. But it's always been, I never knew that. So that is so sweet. And we lost Lola to, heaven gained Lola. And her earthly presence left because of cancer. But that is such a beautiful story. But anyway, I just talking about that and you guys being in this group, you could be in a group, but you could not sign. So had Redeemed gotten an album deal in that 5 years, you would have been bound to your contract. Is that how that would work?
Essentially that's how it would have worked. And I think with the timeline, I'm going back in my mind, I'm thinking Silas and I were already married. I think we were married, and then Redeemed came. But we got married in 2002. So my timeline was a little bit off, but I was already doing gospel gigs and traveling and performing and ministering. We don't call it performing anymore. It's ministering, because I'm a gospel artist now. I do not perform. I minister.
Okay, that's right. Through the music. Okay, that's right.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, the terms with the people of faith, the people of God. Hear me now. We have our own verbiage. We have our own lingo when it comes to the church and how you gonna do it and how it has to be done right. So we do not perform. But going back to Silos, we met 98, and I was at a function for my birthday, and I was in a youth group, a young singles Christian group, and we called it Crunk for Christ, and we were everything. We were single, but we were sold out for the Lord. And so we would have all these functions, and I was like the president, and we had all these events that we were planning. So this was one of the events that they planned for me, which was my birthday, and it was at Dave and Buster's. And he was there celebrating, who is now my son. He was celebrating his son's birthday party, because he's an April baby as well. And so we literally, I'm looking the other way, and my head's turned, and I smacked right into him. And I'm like, hey, hi, how are you? Trying to compose myself, because I hadn't seen this man in so long. And when I knew him, I really didn't like him, because he was like a drill sergeant. I did not care for him very much. When he came in the room, that means things were about to get turned up, like elevated to the max. So I ran into him, and we exchanged pleasantries, and he asked for my number, and I was so paranoid. I was like, I do not want to give him my number, because what if he's still working for, I told you that I was just abnormally paranoid. But we did exchange numbers, and he had called me. I gave him my work number. I did not give him my home number.
Very
smart girl tip.
That's
Don't
right.
give him your home number. But this was before cell phones. Okay,
right.
That advice does not even apply in today's modern society. But back then, I gave him my work number, and he would call, and I was like, I don't recognize that number. I'm not picking up, or what. I didn't talk to him for several weeks, and then I finally picked up the phone. And why was I on this phone with this man on company time for like 3 hours? I was multitasking my work, but I was on the phone with this man because I was like, oh my gosh, I think
you on the company's clock.
I was doing something. I was connecting some dots because it was starting to add up. I was like, he's kind of cool. Like, we have so much in common. Like, oh my gosh, he's in his youth choir. I'm in my choir. We're both a part of these young singles sold out for Christ groups. I forget the name of his singles group, but and we had a lot in common. And I didn't know that he also was a recording artist. Like, this man was on Soul Train. He was in a band too. So he was in a 4-guy group called Fine and Sour. They opened for everybody. They were on tour with Heavy D, with Guy, with New Edition, everybody from Boston. And he was actually an original member of the Funky Bunch, Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. So when you think about groups that hailed from Boston, when you think about groups that started out of Boston, he is one of those groups. He and his group, Finest Hour. But at the time, I didn't know any of this. So no wonder he knew how to be an artist developer, because he had gone through that same, regimen, that old school training of how to actually be a real performer, a real recording artist. We're not talking about people who only sound good in the studio. We're talking about people who, when they hit that stage, they make it do what it do.
Right.
And he comes from the same stock that New Edition came from, the same stock, New Kids on the Block and all of that. So they all know each other, tour together. He's friends with all of those guys. And they just have a common bond because they came up in that same era, and they were around the same venues and promoters and all of that good stuff. So when I talked to him, I said, oh my gosh, I really like you.
Yeah. And
so much.
But you say he's from Boston. So he's from Boston. We never talked about where you're from, because that's a little different. Where you're from and Boston. So what was that like?
Well, it was like the concrete jungle meets the creek, because we always had a creek back near our house, and I would go and play in that creek, and I would catch tadpoles, and I'm talking country. And my mama would say, "Don't you be drinking no water out of that creek."
And we should say from Toccoa, Georgia.
Yes,
so
Toccoa.
Who are watching or listening, it's a small town, but it's beautiful, because I think Tallulah Falls is like right. I remember going either through Toccoa or right there to get to Tallulah Falls to watch in the gore.
They're very close. They're like maybe 45, 30 minutes away, but Toccoa has its own falls. Tallulah Gorge and Tallulah, they have, it's beautiful up there, beautiful up in Helen, Georgia and all of that. But we have Toccoa Falls, and it's so beautiful. And there's the Toccoa Falls College, there's a Christian college up there. So there's a lot to offer, but it is a very small town. One high school. At the time when I was growing up, one middle school. We had 3 elementary schools that all fed into that middle school and that high school. So literally, everybody knew everybody. You had Ingalls, you had Bilo, you had, it was a long time before we got a Walmart.
Did y'all have a Piggly Wiggly?
We did not have a Piggly Wiggly.
A Winn-Dixie.
We did not. We had a Winn-Dixie for sure.
Right. I'm from the same type of hometown. One high school, one middle school, and then the surrounding Byronville, Unadilla, Vienna, Pinehurst. Everybody had their own elementary. Yes. Fed into that one place, and everybody knew everybody. I mean, they literally, you knew everybody. So a small town meets city.
Big city.
Big city. Boston. And you guys just hit it off and jailed from that.
We instantly realized that, I would say this, I was engaged before in college, and I had no idea what I was doing. Like, I think it was a fad or something that you just get engaged. But I thank my Heavenly Father that we did not proceed down that road in college, you know, or with that person, because my soulmate is Muñoz. And I didn't realize that. And I had a phone conversation with him. Then I had another, and within 2 weeks' time, let me tell you that the two of us had already felt in our spirit that we were to be married. But it was like, do I really say that? Am I being naive? Am I being like, is this silly? You know, am I really in love? Like, you know, I'm questioning myself. I'm talking to myself, but the Holy Spirit was also talking to me, and he said, that's your husband. And you know how many people, you know how that can be taken out of context.
Right.
And a woman goes up to me, the Lord told me he was my husband. He's like, boo, I'm married. I cannot be your husband. Right. So it wasn't that type of situation. It was for real. It was for real. It was authentic. It was the voice of the Lord. And so we had a phone conversation. It's like 2 weeks later now. And I say to him, I said, well, has the Lord been saying anything to you? Has the Holy Spirit like said anything to you? Because I didn't want to be the first one to say something. And he said, yeah. He told me you're my wife. And I said, oh, hallelujah. Yeah. And 19 years later, 3 kids later, and a dog, and a grandbaby. Yeah. We are still going strong. So yes, Lord.
Oh my
won't he do it?
He won't. I mean, even when we're being suspicious and paranoid, and
oh God,
you know, that you came from the man, you demand that you watch me. That is so beautiful. So how long did you guys date before you got married? I mean, because you knew early.
We knew early, but for the sake of our family, we put things off. You know, we wanted to get married that year. I think that was 2001 when we finally connected, but we got married in August of 2002. And it just gave our families a chance to get to know us, you know, and his family was in Boston, so it wasn't as imperative because they were not, you know, close enough to drive to. But my family being, you know, from the country and just doing things a certain way and very, you know, traditional, they wanted to meet him. They wanted to get to know him. They wanted to know his people. And I'm like, you're not going to know these people. They're from Boston. Like, you're not, there's no way we're related. You know, we're not cousins or anything like that. So it was a time of get to know you for him. And I think it you know, put a little bit of pressure. It put him under a little bit of scrutiny for that, you know, year or so. But at the end of the day, it gave me a little bit of peace because I wanted them to be comfortable, but I was going to marry him regardless. You know, I was going to give them a chance to get to know him, but that's my man. We get married. Y'all deal with it.
I'm going to stick beside him.
I'm going to stick beside him. That's my man. Him right there. That's him. That's him.
When you guys got married and you mentioned that you gained a son from him, and then you had your daughters, and So what was happening with family and career? Because are you at that point, are you guys doing things together, the two of you? How did that all get sorted out as a mom and wife and a grueling industry that's very demanding?
Well, that is really an excellent question. I had started to do the gospel thing. So that made it a lot easier for the kids to come with. If I'm going to a church, of course they come with. If I'm going to a community event, if I'm singing at some political event, which I actually did a good bit of that too. That was just a wonderful time because I was guaranteed to get paid.
Not $25.
No, but I linked up with the Democratic Party of Georgia. There was actually a soror that worked very, very closely with the Georgia Democratic Party. So that actually gave me like a whole 2 or 3 years of steady gigs from different caucuses to different meetings and political events. And that was wonderful. But those types of things, I could always take the girls to. And my son, we really learned how to be a blended family. It was a learning process before the girls came. And as they were introduced into the world and into our family that began as 3, then 4, then 5. But it was a lot of give and take. It was a lot of learning. I didn't know anything about being a mom. I didn't know anything about being a parent. I didn't know how to balance a career and children. I didn't know how to do that. So it was very experimental, and it was not without consequences, because sometimes I didn't always make the right choices. Sometimes I didn't always make good parenting decisions either. So we relied very heavily on counseling and therapy and training on how to be a good, solid, successful blended family, because you hear so many stories about stepchildren who feel unloved, or, just a situation that's not healthy or ideal. And I didn't want that, because I'm a stepdaughter, but I had a very different situation. My husband is also a stepson. And those were words that we never used. I said, that is not my stepson. That is my son. And I would dare anybody to say that's my stepson. I'm like, we don't say that. We don't do that here. That is my son. Now, I don't put that on him to make him call me mom or anything like that. That came at his own choice whenever he felt comfortable, because I would never did I try to take the place of his mom. I would always say I'm his second mom, so he's blessed with 2 moms, and now he's blessed with 2 dads because she's remarried, wonderful person, both of them. They have a wonderful, beautiful family. And not only does he have 2 sisters on this side, but he has a brother and sister on the other side. So he can't get away. He's just always, going to be inundated with little children around him, now teenagers, and bonus parents. So it has turned out wonderfully, but it was a lot of work. It was some pain. It was a lot of tears. It was a lot of adjustment. And I think a lot of it is just normal teenage boy stuff, normal teenage girl stuff. When they hit a certain age, this is how teenagers respond. I think it has less to do with me being his second mom and more to do with this is teenage boy activity. This is teenage boy behavior, and this is my response. I've always been a disciplinarian. I've always been you're gonna need to be respectful. You're gonna need to not come out your neck at me. You're gonna need to, do what you're supposed to do. It's a team around here, and we all have roles to play. So I was always about structure, and when it comes to the hierarchy in the home and how everybody plays their role. So outside looking in, people may think that I was just being tough, but I'm the same mom. I'm the same mom with him that I am with the girls. Across the board, I keep it the same. If I'm gonna be tough, that's just me. I'm gonna love you. I'm gonna hug you. I'm gonna kiss you. I'm gonna give you anything you think you want, as long as it's in my, capacity to do so. But we gonna have some tough love moments too. So
Right. I imagine too, because you shared with being blended that you guys relied on counseling. Was it tough on the marriage as well as adjusting to being parents too? Because how old was your son when you guys actually officially married?
11.
Okay,
He
so he was well
he
into
actually.
adult, well into approaching preteen age. Okay, okay. So you inherited
And
a whole lot of little teen hormones right off the bat.
yes, the tween years. Yes,
Yeah.
the tween years. But he actually came down here to live at age 10. So that's like like a week or a month or something after Philos and I like started dating. So we were, in this we're in love phase. And then I find out his son is coming to live, not visit, but live. So it was an adjustment. I had to recalibrate my mind to understand this is not going to be a situation where I'm a second mom and the son is like in Boston living with his mom, that we don't have really like a life together. This is real different. So I had to, not that I second guessed or anything like that. It was just like, okay, I got to look at this differently because I'm about to be somebody's mama. This is not actually what I thought it was going to be, but all right, Lord, like how we going to do this? So, and in turn, when he came, he thought he was coming to hang out with his dad, spend time with his dad. He knew he was coming to live here, but he didn't know about me. But, he was excited at first. We were both excited at first, but then reality sits in and you realize this is a whole nother component that you're going to have to work into your life now. It's like, he ain't going nowhere. I ain't going nowhere. We getting ready for this wedding. Not only does my family have to get to know my husband to be, but they also have to get ready to welcome a grandson as well. So there was a lot of relationship building that had to take place. So we really did feel that it was prudent to get counseling, to get some support from outside looking in, someone who specializes in family success. And that's what we did. That's exactly what we did. And sometimes our son would go on his own. Sometimes we'd go as a family. But it was the same therapist, and we were able to just kind of, work through some of the issues that we would have at home. Like we did go through the "you not my mama" phase. We went through that. We went through, a lot of different phases. And also with my husband, we had to dual parent now, and that was new for him.
That's right.
Well, new when it came to me. He knew how to dual parent with our son's biological mom, but again, they're in two different states, so it's different. It's like he has him for one summer, then they trade off. She'll have him the next summer, So it wasn't like you're in the same house living with somebody, and you got to figure out how are we going to parent, co-parent. How are these decisions going to be made? Does he always just come to dad and whatever dad says goes, or does he now have to come to me and ask me? And so it was a while, years of learning how to balance that. And I would, get upset because I didn't feel like I was included in the parenting. And I'm like, I'm his mom too. Like, why don't I get a say in what's happening? And it did cause some issues. It did cause some strife in the marriage. It did prove to be taxing at times. But like I'm saying, with the support of not only therapy, but the Holy Spirit, because we're born again believers. So with everything we do, the word is the final authority. And when we go to the word and the word says what it says about parenting, about children, about respect, about husband and wife relationships, that is our final authority. So whether I'm in my feelings or whether my husband would be in his feelings or whatever, the word of God squashes all of that. And then we have to line up, we just have to line up with what God says. Get your emotions in check, because your emotions are not truth. That's not true. Right. We have come to coin the phrase, "Oh, my truth." Okay, but what does the word say? Right. And and them feelings are fickle. Those feelings don't mean anything unless you can, support it with the word of God. So that's where we ended up with many arguments were squashed by what does the word say?
How was that with your son's mom? How did you guys blend? Was it very easy from the beginning, or did that take some work over the years as well?
Well, I'll say this: we have not had issues, and I believe that is because we have a mutual respect for what it is to raise a son. And it's not always, like I said earlier, it's not always the step parent or stepchild component that is the actual real issue. It's really not. It's just, what is this child going through at this season in his life? And one of the reasons that he came here as a 10-year-old in the first place was because he was starting to, how kids grow up, especially boys. And at that time, she was a single mom. And they start, we call it smelling themselves. And they start, coming out their neck and stuff. And they start getting a little height on themselves. And they start, trying to buck and try. And she's like, "Nah, we're not having that. You need to be around your daddy. You need to go be with your daddy." And that was a blessing. Not, of course she misses him. Of course, we worked out arrangements so that he would have, he'd spend one Christmas with her, spend a Christmas with us. We would just trade off from year to year. But we had that mutual respect, because it's like, no, we understand that boys can be a handful. We understand that, especially a boy that he always wanted his parents to be together. He didn't want them to not be together, but they had not been together since he was probably 2. So their relationship had severed for a long time, but here he is, 8 years of his life at that point, still with hope that hopefully, maybe they can still get together. But then what did his dad go into? He go and marry somebody. So that was a lot of, what we were dealing with on the spiritual level. On the spiritual level, it was, I really don't want him to marry her. Dang, they're married. I really don't want them to be married, because I wanted my parents to be together. Dang, now they having a baby. This ain't never gonna end.
My friend is all falling apart.
It's unraveling. And my daughter, our daughter Sayina, she was our first daughter together. And so at 13, he became a big brother for the first time. And then his mom had gotten remarried, and she had a son, like back to back, and then next thing you know, 3 years later, here comes Simone in our marriage. We have our second baby girl together, and then they end up having a baby girl. So it was like, it's over. Our son was like, it's over, it's a wrap. These people keep having children. These people keep having babies. And this was all while he was a teenager. It was probably, from age 13 to 16 or 17 is when he got 2 siblings on either side. And it was still, you're still dealing with a young man, a young teen that still has emotions, who still is processing, childhood dreams that will never be realized. And someone has to understand that. And we did. And that was part of the reason why counseling was such an integral part of not only our marriage, but also how we raised our children, because they can't always talk to us because we the problem. You can't talk to you can't always talk to the person that is the problem. Right. You got to talk to an outside person who is impartial, who can give you sound wisdom and godly advice. One of the things that we always sought out was a godly counselor. We didn't just find someone who was good at their job. We always wanted them to come from a biblical point of reference so that we could be counseled properly.
By the word. That's right.
Yes, yes. It's just going to reinforce what we already are practicing or should be practicing.
That's right. That is so true. So now tell me about we talked about this before the podcast, chronic pain, and when that came into your life, because now you're blended, you've got babies, you've got you still have your career, and then what happened?
Well, I actually started to my career part had started to kind of wane off a little bit, because at that time I had the 3 kids, and probably even before the 3 kids, I went back into the workforce like a regular job when Saina was
with
1.
Us regular people, you came with those non-singing people.
No, I was just the gospel circuit. It served its purpose, and I thank God for it. I really do. I thank God for the relationships. I thank God for the ministry and the people who He used me to impact, and me as well be impacted by those ministries as well. But it wasn't lucrative, and I didn't have time. I was a mom, I was a wife, I was picking kids up from school. I'm in PTA, I'm selling cookies, them doggone fundraisers, cookie dough and Christmas paper. I was, and then my son was
right now.
My son was a basketball player, so he had he played AAU basketball, so he was traveling with basketball, and we had a full plate just being, a regular family. So there was not a lot of time that I could cut out for a music career. So I ended up going back into the workforce when Saina turned 16 years ago. And it was commercial real estate, and I enjoyed it. I was like really good at it. I enjoyed it. It was what it was. It's unlike residential. It's not like that at all. Commercial is, big. We talking hundreds of thousands of dollars just in rent alone for Walmart to pay a company that I worked for just so they could, be in that shopping center. So I learned the business. I learned about contracts. I really cut my teeth. I was even doing paralegal work. Like, I was doing a lot of things, wore many hats, made some changes that they probably still have in place today. But that was how God, he has engineered me to make any situation that I'm in. He's showed me how to make it better. Like, I'm a problem solver. So when I go into a situation, it's not that I'm looking for things to fix. I'm just like, how can we be more efficient? How can we do this and waste, not waste paper? How can we go digital? Like, these people were still like using handwritten sheets. And I'm like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to put this in an Excel spreadsheet, and we're going to color code this thing, and I'm going to email it to all of y'all. That's what we're going to do. So it was a process. So I started working this job, and I started having some problems. Maybe, I started there in 2008, I think. Oh my, I don't remember. 2005. I started in 2005 because Kayla Sienna was 1. So I started in 2005. So I had been working, going strong, corporate America. You're sitting at a job, you're typing. I started having some problems with my wrist. But it wasn't anything. It was just, okay, well, you get a little, you get those little pads that's padded, and you just rest your arm on there and you're fine. So I started having some problems with my back. Oh, they said, well, just get a little stool. You know, you order these things and they're not on your dime, they're on the company dime. So I got a little like stool, a soft padded stool for my feet to rest on. And then I got a back pillow. All of these things I'm ordering, you know, through the job because they're like, yeah, this is going to help. So-and-so down the hall got this and it really helped her back. But I was increasingly, you know, more and more and more, I was having back issues. And I would even have to stand at my desk sometimes and work because I could not sit down. It would just be so much pain. And I would stand up and, you know, like my bosses, I assisted two vice presidents and they would come around and, are you okay? And I'm like, well, I'm here, you know, smile on my face, still, you know, typing away at my computer. But it became a problem. So around 2010, into 2010, my husband was like, you got to go see what's going on. Something is really not right. Like you're not moving right. You're not moving with agility. Like I was a young girl and I should not have been affected in that way. Like there would be times when I would start walking, like take off walking, I would not be able to complete my next step. I would not be able to, I would be frozen. Like my back would be constricted in a way that it would not allow me to actually move my foot forward. So I got checked out. I was starting having a lot of issues concurrently at the same time with my cycle. It was just extremely long, extremely painful. I'm talking debilitating pain where you cannot get out of the bed type of pain where when the girls they were little at that time, you know, I'd get home from my day job and they hadn't seen me all day and they just want to run and jump into my arms. That running and jumping into my arms would nearly knock me to the floor because their little knee might hit my stomach or their elbow or, you know, just the force of their body coming in for a hug. It would send me reeling with pain. And I mean, I knew something wasn't right. Like my abdomen area, it is not supposed to feel like this. Right. And if they just, you know, if you're sitting on the couch and you know how little kids are, they'll just flop on, just hop on your lap or just sit down. Girl, that simple action right there, like my eyes would water. I would be like, oh my gosh, you can't sit on mommy like that. You can't hop in mommy's lap like that. So they had started to handle me like paper, like I was gonna break. Like I had said it so much that they would be like, oh mommy, we don't want to hurt your tummy. Oh mommy, you know, they would come in for a hug and then they would rethink it and they'd be like, oh mommy, is it okay to hug you? And I'm like, gosh, this is breaking my heart because they can't even. Not only is my way of life being affected, but theirs is being affected too, because they see that something simple as a hug is causing mommy pain.
It's an old day.